In 1324, a man arrived in Cairo, Egypt. He wasn't just a king, he wasn't an emperor. He was something far more dangerous to the global economy. He was rich. So rich, in fact, that his 3-month vacation single-handedly collapsed the price of gold across an entire continent. His name was Mansa Musa. And historians today agree on one thing. He was the richest human being who ever lived. To understand just how wealthy Mansa Musa was, you need to understand where he came from. Mansa Musa ruled the Mali Empire in the 14th century, a territory that stretched across most of West Africa. Think of it as the medieval equivalent of controlling the entire oil supply of the world, because that's essentially what Mali had: gold. At a time when roughly half of the old world's gold came from West Africa, Mansa Musa controlled the source. But here's what makes his story truly insane. He didn't just sit on a throne counting his money. He decided to take a road trip. And that road trip would change history forever. In 1324, Mansa Musa announced he was making the Hajj, the sacred Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca. But this wasn't going to be a quiet spiritual journey. Mansa Musa's caravan consisted of 60,000 people, 12,000 servants, each one wearing silk and carrying a 4-pound gold staff, 1,000 heralds in brocade and Persian silk, 500 slaves, each carrying a gold bar weighing 50 pounds, and 80 to 100 camels. Each camel carried 300 pounds of gold. Let me put that in perspective for you. If Mansa Musa were alive today, modern economists estimate his net worth at approximately $400 billion to $1 trillion. Some historians argue that his wealth was effectively incalculable because he controlled an estimated 40 to 50% of the world's known gold supply during the early 14th century. The value of that level of control cannot be directly converted into modern currency. That's 4 times richer than Bill Gates, 3 times richer than Jeff Bezos, and he was about to give away a significant chunk of it. The caravan arrived in Cairo, Egypt, in July 1324. And Mansa Musa didn't just visit, he shopped. He bought everything: land, buildings, textiles, horses, gifts for officials. But most importantly, he gave away gold to the poor, to scholars, to religious leaders, to anyone who impressed him. He handed out so much gold in Cairo that the price of gold, the global standard of wealth, plummeted by 25%. For context, that's like if one person walked into New York City, started handing out $100 bills, and the US dollar lost a quarter of its value. It took 12 years for the gold market in Cairo to recover. And here's the wildest part. Mansa Musa realized he'd made a mistake. On his return journey, he borrowed gold from Cairo's moneylenders at high interest rates. Why? To intentionally inject gold back into the economy and stabilize the market he'd accidentally destroyed. The richest man in history, accidentally crashing an economy, then personally bailing it out. But Mansa Musa wasn't just a walking economic disaster, he was a builder. On his return from Mecca, he brought back architects, scholars, and artisans from across the Islamic world. He commissioned the Djinguereber Mosque in Timbuktu, still standing today, over 700 years later. He built the Sankore University, which became one of the world's first major centers of learning. At its peak, the university held 25,000 students and 1 million manuscripts. Timbuktu became a hub of trade, knowledge, and culture, the Oxford or Harvard of the medieval African world, and Mansa Musa made sure everyone knew about it. In 1375, European mapmakers depicted him on the Catalan Atlas, sitting on a throne holding a massive gold nugget, wearing a golden crown. He was literally put on the map, and Europe was watching. very, very closely. But let's be clear about something. Mansa Musa's wealth wasn't built on kindness. It was built on empire. The Mali Empire expanded through military conquest. Towns were absorbed, populations were taxed, and while Mansa Musa freed many slaves during his pilgrimage, the empire itself relied on slave labor for mining and agriculture. His pilgrimage, that legendary display of wealth, also included 500 slaves carrying his gold. History remembers the generosity, but it rarely mentions who carried the weight. Mansa Musa died around 1337. And here's the tragedy. Within 2 generations of his death, the empire began to fracture. Civil wars, invasions, the Portuguese arrival on the coast, redirecting trade routes. By the 16th century, the Mali Empire was a shadow of what it had been. But Mansa Musa's impact, it never disappeared. He put West Africa on the world stage. He funded a golden age of learning. He proved that wealth and intellect could coexist. And he gave us a story so unbelievable that historians spent 700 years trying to confirm it wasn't a myth. Spoiler: it wasn't. So the next time someone talks about the richest people in history, remember this. There was a man who carried so much gold across the Sahara that he broke an economy, who built universities in the desert that rivaled anything in Europe, who was so wealthy that his name became synonymous with unimaginable riches. His name was Mansa Musa, and he was just getting started.